Welcome to Nate's Haunted Hour, where the shadows come alive and the stories of the unknown take hold of your soul. Before we dive into tonight's terrors, make sure to like this video and hit that subscribe button, if you dare. Beware, dear listener, for once you enter, there's no turning back. So turn down the lights and prepare yourself for the fright of your life. You're in for an hour of chills, thrills, and tales that haunt the darkest corners of your mind. This is Nate's Haunted Hour. And don't forget, subscribing may just keep the spirits at bay, for now.
Part 4, The Final Confrontation. Sir Aldric stumbled through the twisted halls of Sainte-Eulalie de Cernon, his mind teetering on the edge of madness. The once proud knight who had fought for God and the Templars now felt like a broken man, his faith shattered, his purpose uncertain. His torch barely flickered in the darkness, and the whispers of the demons continued their relentless assault, echoing through his thoughts like the tolling of funeral bells. The halls of the castle seemed to pulse with malevolent life, shifting and twisting as though the stones themselves had been corrupted by the demonic presence that lurked within. Aldric no longer knew if what he saw was real or if his mind had been twisted by the same dark forces that had claimed his comrades. Shadows moved with unnatural speed, slithering along the walls and floors, whispering unspeakable things in languages long forgotten. Aldric's sword hung heavy at his side, and his armor, once gleaming and pristine, was now battered and blood-stained. His body ached from the constant battle against unseen forces, but worse was the toll the demons had taken on his spirit. Every step forward felt like a test of his will, and Aldric knew that he was nearing the end of his strength. It was in the largest of the castle's chambers that Aldric finally found the source of the evil. The demon lord who had claimed the souls of his comrades and tainted the land with its foul presence. The room was vast, its ceiling lost in shadow, and at its far end stood a grotesque throne fashioned from twisted iron and bone. Seated upon it was the demon lord, a towering figure of nightmare. Its skin was a sickly, mottled black, and its body seemed to shift and ripple as though it were made of shadow. Its eyes burned with an unholy fire, twin orbs of malevolence that bore into Aldric's very soul. The demon lord's voice echoed through the chamber, a guttural sound that reverberated through Aldric's bones. "You have come to die, little knight," it hissed, its voice a mocking whisper that filled the air with the stench of decay. "Your faith is weak, and your God has forsaken you. You are nothing but a plaything for us now." Aldric gripped his sword tightly, though his hands trembled. His mind was a storm of doubt and fear, but somewhere deep within, a small ember of resolve still burned. He had come too far to turn back now. His brothers' souls depended on him, and even if God had forsaken him, Aldric would not allow their torment to continue. "God has not forsaken me," Aldric said, though the words felt hollow even to his own ears. He raised his sword, the weight of it nearly unbearable, and charged at the demon lord with all the strength he had left. The demon lord rose from its throne with a slow, deliberate grace, its massive form unfolding with a dreadful elegance. Its claws slashed through the air with deadly precision, and Aldric barely managed to block the blow with his sword. The force of the impact sent him stumbling backward, and the demon laughed, a sound like the grinding of bones. "Your God cannot save you here," the demon hissed, lunging forward with inhuman speed. Aldric ducked beneath its next strike and slashed upward with his sword, the blade biting into the demon's flesh. But the wound was shallow, and the demon seemed to shrug off the pain as though it were nothing more than an annoyance. The battle was fierce and unrelenting, each blow from the demon sending shockwaves through Aldric's body. His armor provided little protection against the demon's searing claws, and he could feel his strength ebbing with each passing moment. The demon's voice filled his mind, taunting him with visions of his fallen comrades, their bodies twisted and broken, their souls lost to the abyss. "You are no savior," the demon whispered, its voice like poison in Aldric's mind. "You are a butcher, a killer, no better than those you have slain in the name of your false god." Aldric faltered, his sword slipping from his grasp as the weight of the demon's words pressed down on him. Doubt flooded his mind, and for a moment he wondered if the demon was right. Had he truly fought for righteousness, or had he simply been another pawn in a war of blood and death? But then he thought of his comrades, the men who had stood beside him in battle, who had fought and bled for the Templars and for their faith. He thought of their souls, trapped in the hellish torment of the castle, and the small ember of resolve within him flared into a blazing fire. "I will not let you have them," Aldric whispered, his voice barely audible, but filled with a steely determination. With a roar, Aldric lunged forward, snatching his sword from the ground and driving it into the demon's chest with all the strength he had left. The blade pierced through the demon's flesh, sinking deep into its foul heart. The demon let out a deafening screech, its body convulsing as black smoke poured from the wound. The demon lord's fiery eyes dimmed, its form withering as Aldric's sword remained embedded in its chest. Aldric fell to his knees, gasping for breath as the chamber around him began to collapse. The demon's death throes sent tremors through the castle, and the walls cracked and crumbled as though the very structure was being torn apart. Aldric knew that he had little time left. He staggered to his feet, his body battered and broken, and began to make his way out of the chamber. As he stumbled through the collapsing castle, the whispers of the demons began to fade, and for the first time since entering Sainte-Eulalie de Cernon, Aldric felt a sense of peace. Part 5. The Bitter End. Sir Aldric limped through the crumbling ruins of Sainte-Eulalie de Cernon, each step a battle against the pain that racked his body. Blood seeped through the cracks in his armor, staining the stone floor beneath his feet. His vision blurred with exhaustion, and the weight of his wounds bore down on him. But he pressed on, driven by a singular purpose, to free his fallen brothers' souls from the hellish grip of the castle. The walls around him groaned and buckled, great chunks of stone falling from the ceiling as the very foundations of the castle began to collapse. The ancient curse that had plagued the land for centuries was unraveling, its malevolent power dissipating with the death of the demon lord. But Aldric knew that the castle would not die quietly, it would drag him down with it if it could. As he reached the outer courtyard, the night sky above was thick with black clouds swirling in a tempest, lightning flashing in the distance. The ground beneath his feet trembled, and deep fissures split the earth as though the land itself sought to consume the cursed castle. But something else caught Aldric's attention. At the far end of the courtyard stood the spectral forms of his comrades, their bodies translucent and glowing with a faint, ethereal light. Brother Vincent, Sir Roderick, and the others, men Aldric had fought beside, men whose souls had been trapped within the castle's walls, now stood before him, their faces no longer twisted in agony, but peaceful, serene. Aldric staggered toward them, his heart aching with both joy and sorrow. "My brothers," he whispered, his voice weak and trembling. The spirits regarded him with solemn eyes, their expressions filled with gratitude. Brother Vincent, the leader of their group, stepped forward and bowed his head to Aldric. "You have freed us, Sir Aldric," he said, his voice echoing faintly like the wind through the trees. "You have done what we could not. Our souls are at peace because of your sacrifice." Tears welled in Aldric's eyes. "It was not I alone," he replied. "You fought beside me in spirit, and it was your courage that gave me the strength to continue." Sir Roderick smiled faintly, his form flickering like a dying flame. "We can rest now, Aldric. We go to a place where the darkness cannot touch us." The spectral forms began to fade, dissolving into the night air like mist. Aldric watched in silence as his brothers departed for the next world, a world free from the torment that had held them captive for so long. But as the last of their forms vanished, Aldric felt the cold grip of despair creeping into his heart. The curse was broken, his brothers were freed. But at what cost? The castle continued to crumble around him, its death throes threatening to consume him in the ruins. And though Aldric had done what he had set out to do, he could not shake the feeling that he, too, had been forever changed by the horrors he had faced. The ground beneath him began to collapse, and Aldric fell to his knees, the strength leaving his body. His vision darkened, and a cold numbness crept through his limbs. He had given everything in his quest to free his brothers, and now he had nothing left. His faith, once his guiding light, felt distant and fragile, shattered by the nightmare he had endured. In his final moments, Aldric whispered a prayer, not to God, but to his fallen comrades. He asked for their forgiveness, for failing to save them in life, but thanked them for their strength in death. His hand grasped at the dirt, his mind drifting between life and oblivion. And then, just before the darkness took him, he felt a warmth, a presence beside him. He turned his head and saw Alerion, his loyal steed, standing over him. The horse, though shaken, had found its way back to him, its eyes filled with a kind of quiet understanding. Alerion nuzzled Aldric's hand gently, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Aldric felt a faint glimmer of peace. As the castle crumbled into ruin around them, Aldric smiled faintly. The knight had lost much, his comrades, his faith, perhaps even his sanity. But in his final moments, he found a bittersweet solace in knowing that, even in the face of overwhelming darkness, he had not faced it alone. The earth trembled one last time, and as the dust settled over the ruins of Sainte-Eulalie de Cernon, the castle was no more. Its curse broken, its demons banished, and its souls finally freed. And there, amidst the rubble, Sir Aldric and Alerion lay together, two warriors who had fought not just against demons, but against the very darkness within themselves. Their story, like the castle, had come to an end, but in that end there was peace.